I've been training for a little while and training every day for some time as well. So that's a lot of time spent thinking about training, doing training, just being in that space around weights makes you think about weights, right? You are your environment. This is one of the things that attracted me to training every day. Is just that I have an opportunity to come into this space and think about about the space that I'm in. Weights, squat racks, benches, all that stuff. And for a lot of time, it's been my escape from the real troubles in the world, right? I just come in here and think about meaningless squat numbers and deadlifts and bench presses and whatnot, right? It's like an escape. Through all of this time of thinking, I don't know how many freaking hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, I've spent thinking about this. I've, through trial and error, worked out that, okay, if my body feels this way, I can do this. So if I have hip pain, the oldest freaking nemesis in my books, I now have a whole host of things that I can turn to make myself feel better. And recently, since this started this year, I've had a lot of success. So I have ideas in my mind now that I can just literally do now and hip pain goes away. One of the things that I've also learned from squatting ATG is that lower back pumps come and go, and over the course of my training have come and go depending on other things I'm doing. So, if I have a really bad lower back pump, you'd think your lower back is weak. I've had that diagnosis and I've run that many, many times, and pumping the lower back with back extensions doesn't sort that problem out. What does sort that problem out is anterior core training. So your six back muscles, the belly stuff, right? The obliques, the internal, external, the transverse, abdominis, all these structures in front of your gut. You work them out, all of a sudden the lower back pump goes away. Interesting, right? When you do your barbell rows, I don't know how many times I've spoken about that. I'll do a few sessions of that in a week or two. All of a sudden I start feeling this groin sensation, this sharp groin pain, like something's going to tear. Well, that sensation is very, very indicative of you having a threatened hernia. And I've spoken about that in the past as well. The hernia, basically just a bit of bowel poking out through the abdominal wall, usually around the umbilical area or the belly button area or around the groin for men. Very, very common. So if you're doing your wonderful program which someone's created or you've created, and you feel these sensations, you will be an absolute monkey to ignore them. These are your vital signs. You have to pay attention to these things. Don't be a numbskull and just be like, oh, well, I've got a 12-week program, I've got to push on. No. Your body is a very much unique thing, and it can do all sorts of different things, and you have to adapt to it. You need to have some sort of auto regulation in the system where you're like, okay, shit, this was not foreseen. When I sat down with my nice pen and paper, I need to deal with this. And so this has been kind of the basis of my training, is that when you're coaching an athlete or you're coaching a team, which I've done in the past, I've coached basketball in my playing days as well. Part of the playing for the senior team was to coach a junior team. And so I did coach the under-16 team. And so I see things, we ran this play, it didn't go well. I don't just continue to run that play. The other opponent has worked something out, so we need to counter that. And this is intelligence. This is good thinking. Now, there's also a scenario where you do too much of this and you change things for the sake of changing things. And that's also dumb. You're being a monkey, you're being a bored monkey. Today, I decided that these sensations that I've been feeling in my lower back when I'm hack squatting are real. And so much so that I've omitted good mornings the last posterior leg day, hamstring day. And I kept thinking about it. Okay, so is this omission of the good mornings, the hip hinge, going to solve the problem? And I spent a day or so thinking about it, and I came to the conclusion that no, it's not. The lower back is not the problem. The problem is lower back's buddy, which is the front of the pelvis, or the front of the body. So my guts, my anterior core is weak. So it kind of annoyed me that I removed good mornings, and annoyed me for a couple of days now. I kind of think it's a freaking amazing exercise, especially when thinking about what hack squats are. The absolute non-existence of any hip hinging pisses me off, and I really need to do a hip hinge. So I really want to do good mornings. And my solution today was, you know what? I'm going to dedicate an entire freaking training session to core. It's only fair. It is only fair, and it's only right that I emphasize one of the best and most important structures of our muscular system, which is the core. Now, why do I say that? Those are some heavy words. Well, because if you look at the skeletal system, if you look at the muscular skeletal system, we have all sorts of rigidity everywhere. We have all sorts of supportive postural structures which help us stay safe, help us stay balanced, and protect the vital organs. If you look at the spine, the two weakest parts of our spine are the neck and the lumbar spine. Why do I say that? Well, the stuff in between those two things, they have ribs. The thoracic spine has ribs. And anytime you have a long bone or you have a bone, that is a very dense piece of tissue, and that provides stability. And so your thoracic spine is strong and insulated. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And so much, much stronger than the lumbar. The lumbar spine is just hanging out in the wind. The lumbar spine purely relies on musculature around the lumbar spine. So we're talking about the erectors and all the stuff around the front. Transverse abdominis, internal, external obliques, the six-pack muscle, rectus abdominis, all these other structures around there. And we provide intra-abdominal pressure through those structures to provide stability, which the thoracic spine gets from the damn ribs. And taking a deep breath in. This is why we put belts around our belly and not around our chest. The chest already has a belt called the ribs. And so if you don't train your core and you start adding horsepower to your legs and your butt and your back, I mean, as in the upper back, all that stuff is great, but you have a weak link. And if you think about the structure, the way we're built, we're probably going to leave most power or leak most power through the lumbar spine. So now that I'm in this bodybuilding phase and I've dedicated all sorts of freaking days for all sorts of different muscles, how the hell did I overthink this? I need to have a dedicated day where I just do core. And speaking of core, there is 101 different million things you can do. In my experience, I've done all sorts of different things, and I've always come back to the sit-up. The weighted sit-up seems to me very, very good. Now you think to yourself, but the sit-up doesn't train your core. Sit-ups are hip flexion. Your rectus abdominis and your core, they don't insert into the hip. None of those muscles do hip flexion. How does a sit-up train your core? Aha, glad you asked. The way they do that is through a secondary movement. The hip flexors which flex you in a sit-up are iliopsoas. So this muscle psoas is like the primary hip flexor. Originates in the T12 spine, thoracic 12 spine process, vertebra, and then it goes all the way down, fans down all to about L5. It's like a fan muscle. Each bone in the spine gets a piece of it. And all that stuff inserts into kind of like the proximal femur or the nearest part of the femur to your groin. So when that muscle shortens, the femur comes up to the chest, or if you've anchored your feet, your torso comes to your thighs. There's other hip flexors as well, like the rectus femoris, and there's other little structures around that kind of help with hip flexion as well. But that's what happens. Now, how the hell do abs come into this? Well, if you look at the diagram, if you look at the Google anatomy, you will see that when those two structures come together, the spine, the lower spine, lower back, and the thigh muscle, when they come together, what is going to happen is a lumbar lordosis, or you're going to start to really, really hyperextend your lower back because those two things are coming together. Now, if you surgically remove your abs, you will just basically, your head will fall backwards and you will just come up with a big belly kind of thing, right? Like you'll have any, your ribs will just open up, right? Because you have no musculature there. So what happens with the abs and all the stuff that I mentioned, the rectus femoris, transverse abdominis, is that it is trying to counteract the force that the psoas, iliopsoas, is acting upon the lower back and trying to extend the lower back. What the muscles of the core try to do is to keep the lower back neutral. Neutral while we are flexing the hips, if that makes any sense. It can be a little bit hard to understand, but without the abs, you will not have a neutral spine. You will have a lumbar lordotic spine. So really, really excessive arch in your lower back without a strong core. So when you activate the core, you will be able to hip flex, do sit-ups, with a neutral spine, and that's kind of what you want. Not even neutral spine, even like too much, like flexing the spine is probably better. Like the hollow body position is probably best because that's really emphasizing the anterior core. This is why I love the sit-ups. A lot of people bastardize the sit-ups, but I've seen lots and lots of Olympians use sit-ups, specifically talking about Olympic weightlifters. I know there's other options out there. I'm not shitting on all of them, but I feel like this is my favorite, and I've had good success with it, and it was part of my routine when I got to 265 on the deadlift as well. So I've had some success, and it's really kind of been my favorite one. And so I'll continue to do that. I'll probably try some other things, but this is the stuff I'm working with and starting with at the moment. Like always, guys, I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.